In a small New Mexico town, a young female mechanic named Samantha Blake offered to help a quiet police veteran restore his old Mustang. No contracts, no expectations, just compassion and a deep love for engines. But what began as a simple Mustang restoration soon uncovered a powerful story of loss, legacy, and healing. 1 month later, the veteran returned not with a broken car, but with a gift that would change her life forever. This unforgettable story of how a mechanic girl's act of kindness during a Mustang restoration led to something far greater will move and inspire you. Before we dive in, tell us where in the world are you watching from? If you enjoy stories like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button because tomorrow's episode is truly mind-blowing. Let's get started. Most mornings in Red Rock, New Mexico, start slow. The coffee's strong, the wind's dry, and the town doesn't bother pretending to be anything other than what it is: quiet, cracked, and half-forgotten. But in a converted old barn at the edge of town, something's always humming. Samantha Blake, 26, isn't your typical small-town girl. Grease under her nails, a wrench in her back pocket, and a smile that rarely comes unless she's under the hood of something that shouldn't be running, but is. Thanks to her, she inherited the garage from her grandfather, along with a temperamental orange tabby and a wall of rusted license plates. Business wasn't booming, but it was enough. Then, one afternoon, a sound pulled her out from under a Chevy, the low, sick growl of a dying engine, and the desperate cough of a 1967 Mustang limping into her lot. Behind the wheel was a man who didn't say much: gray beard, ball cap, and the unmistakable look of someone who'd seen too much and still carried it. That's how she met Mr. Garrett. She thought it'd be just another quick fix. She had no idea it would change her life. At first, Samantha thought it was just another beat-up classic rolling in something someone's uncle forgot in a shed. But when the old man stepped out, her gut told her this wasn't just about a car. Garrett didn't speak much. His words came slow and careful, like each one had to pass through a wall before it reached the air. He didn't ask for full restoration. Just said, "Get her breathing again." That's all. The Mustang looked worse up close. Rust along the fenders, cracked windshield, interior so sun-baked the leather cracked like dry riverbeds. But Samantha didn't flinch. She touched the hood like you'd touch a wounded animal. "She's got a good frame," she murmured. "This'll take time." Garrett nodded. Then, before she could ask anything else, he left. No name, no number, just gone. She started that same afternoon. Something about the car felt personal. She could tell by the way he looked at it, like it was the last piece of a story he couldn't tell. And the more she worked, the more she wondered. Each time she peeled away a layer of rust, it felt like pulling back some invisible memory. She found old police radio wires still tucked behind the dash. An old photograph tucked in the glove box, water-damaged, but still there, a younger Garrett in uniform, standing beside the same Mustang, and a boy, maybe 8 or 9, smiling wide, holding a toy badge. Samantha stared at that photo for a long time. It wasn't just a car. She went above and beyond. New hoses. A rebuilt carburetor. She found a used steering wheel from the exact same model year, cleaned it by hand, ordered a fresh set of seat covers, and stitched them herself when the measurements didn't quite fit. Day after day, Garrett didn't come back, but Samantha kept going. She even started talking to the car. "He brought you in for a reason," she'd say, wiping sweat from her brow. "You meant something." Some days, she worked through lunch. Other days, she played old records on the garage radio blues. Mostly, somehow, they suited the Mustang's mood. And slowly, she brought the beast back to life. 3 weeks later, on a Sunday morning, she turned the key and the Mustang coughed, sputtered, and roared. Alive? Samantha didn't call him, didn't know how. But the very next morning, as if the car had summoned him, Garrett's dusty pickup rolled into the lot. He didn't smile, just walked up to the Mustang, put a weathered hand on the hood, and closed his eyes for a long moment. When he opened them, they were wet. "She runs?" he asked softly. Samantha nodded. "She's better than you left her." He looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. "Thank you." She shrugged, wiping her hands on a rag. "Just doing my job." But they both knew it wasn't just that. Garrett lingered beside the car, fingers tracing the edges of the photo she'd left on the dash. "My son," he said, voice low. That was his car. He didn't make it home from his last shift. Samantha said nothing. She didn't need to. Some moments don't ask for words. After Garrett told her about his son, something shifted. Not in the way Samantha worked, the car was already running fine, but in the way she stood around it. She started turning off the radio, started cleaning the garage a little more, started coming in early, just to sit in the Mustang before the sun rose, fingers trailing along the steering wheel like it was sacred. The photo of Garrett's son stayed tucked into the visor now, a silent passenger watching over everything. She didn't ask questions, and Garrett didn't offer more. He took the car home the next day, said thank you once more, and drove off with a wave that felt too short, too light for what had passed between them. And just like that, he was gone again. Days passed, then a week, then 2. Business rolled in, brake jobs, oil changes, a cracked radiator on an old Ford truck. But no Garrett, no Mustang. Samantha didn't expect anything, but part of her missed the quiet presence, missed the way he looked at the Mustang like it was the only thing keeping some part of him from falling apart. Then, exactly 1 month later to the day, it happened. She was under the hood of a Subaru, fighting a stubborn serpentine belt, when she heard a familiar low rumble, that unmistakable Mustang purr. She stepped out just in time to see it ease into the garage lot. And behind the wheel, Garrett, wearing the same cap, same jacket. But this time, something in his posture had changed. He was smiling. He got out, but he wasn't alone. Behind him, strapped to the flatbed of an old tow truck, was something Samantha never expected to see. A full mechanic's toolbox, shiny, red, and clearly expensive, sat beside a stack of brand-new diagnostic equipment. Hoses, pressure testers, even a vintage neon sign that read, "Blake's Garage" in cursive. "What's this?" she asked, wiping her hands. Garrett didn't answer right away. He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. "For you," he said, handing it to her. Samantha took it, hands suddenly unsure. The paper was thick, inside a handwritten letter. "Samantha, you didn't just fix a car. You brought back a piece of my son I thought I'd lost forever. That Mustang sat in our garage untouched for 10 years. I couldn't even look at it. But the way you treated it like it mattered, like he mattered, brought something back I can't explain. My boy was supposed to take over my shop before he joined the force. He always wanted to fix things. You reminded me of him. So I sold what was left of the business. And I want you to have this. Keep building, keep giving people hope. That's what you're really good at. Garrett." Samantha didn't speak. She couldn't. Her eyes stung. Her hands shook. She looked over at the flatbed again. The tools, the equipment, the quiet legacy of a man neither of them would ever see again now handed over like a torch in the dark. Garrett rested a hand on her shoulder, firm and fatherly. "You're not just a mechanic," he said. "You're a storyteller. Just happens your stories are made of steel and grease." And with that, he turned, climbed back into the Mustang, and disappeared down the dirt road once more. Samantha stood there long after the engine faded. Not because she was stunned, but because somehow, that day, she realized the greatest restorations aren't about machines. They're about people. That night, Samantha didn't close the garage right away. She sat on the cold concrete floor with the letter still in her lap. The words weren't fancy. They didn't try to impress. But they landed somewhere deeper than any socket wrench ever reached. It had been a long time since she felt anything hit like that. The garage had always been her shelter, her escape. When she was 16 and the world started to tilt sideways, it was her grandfather who handed her a wrench instead of words. "Fix something," he said, "and the noise will quiet down." And he was right. But this was different. This wasn't just about quieting noise anymore. It was about hearing something bigger. Over the next few days, Samantha kept coming back to Garrett's words. "You brought back a piece of my son I thought I'd lost forever." She'd read it again in the mornings, sometimes while the coffee brewed, sometimes while her hands were black with grease. She wasn't used to that kind of weight. Not from a customer, not from a stranger. But it felt right. Like the universe had handed her more than a job. It had handed her trust, and she didn't want to waste it. She used the new tools right away. Not because they were shiny, but because they felt like they came with permission to think bigger, to do more than patch leaks and swap alternators. So she started saying yes to projects she used to turn away. An old couple brought in a '79 Dodge camper they'd been trying to fix for years. Samantha told them she'd figure it out. A single dad limped in with a minivan that coughed every time it turned left. She cleared space in the shop even though she was swamped. She worked later, showed up earlier. The work was the same bolts, belts, busted radiators. But her heart, that was new. She started asking questions. Not just what's wrong with the car, but what's the story? Because every vehicle had one. Every rust patch was a memory. Every dent had a reason. And behind every broken thing was a person trying to keep going. Just like Garrett. One morning, about a week after he'd returned with the tools, she found herself standing in front of the Mustang again. It wasn't even in her garage anymore. It had come back in a dream or something close to it. She remembered the way it looked under the early light, how the engine sounded when it finally roared, how Garrett's eyes had softened when he saw it alive again. And something inside her said, this isn't just about fixing cars anymore. She began leaving space on the walls of the garage not for license plates like her grandfather had, but for stories. Real ones. Photos. Notes. Even little objects people left behind. A cracked speedometer. A keychain. One woman mailed her a snapshot of her and her husband in front of the Buick Samantha had revived he'd passed 2 weeks later. That picture went on the wall. The garage started to change. But not in the way people expected. It didn't get fancier. She didn't put in AC or rebrand or jack up her prices. What changed was the feeling. Word spread, quietly but steadily, that Blake's garage was where you brought your car when it was more than just a car. People came from other towns. One woman drove 5 hours with a broken-down Beetle that had once belonged to her mother. She taught me how to drive in this, she said, holding back tears. It hasn't run since she passed. Samantha fixed it. But more importantly, she listened. And the woman left with more than just a car that ran. She left with something healed. And that's when Samantha realized something Garrett had already seen. A mechanic doesn't just fix what's broken. Sometimes, she helps people put pieces of themselves back together, too. It had been nearly 3 months since Garrett first pulled into Blake's garage. In that time, Samantha had fixed over 24 cars, but somehow, The Mustang still lingered in her mind like the echo of an old song. She didn't expect to see it again. Garrett had gotten what he came for, and she had closed that chapter, tucked it away as a powerful memory. Then, late one afternoon, just as the sun was casting long golden shadows through the garage bay, the Mustang rolled in again. But this time, Garrett wasn't driving. A young man stepped out. He couldn't have been more than 20. Same dark eyes, same quiet strength in the way he stood. Samantha wiped her hands and walked over. "You must be Samantha," he said. "My name's Jordan. I'm Garrett's grandson." She blinked. Wait, grandson. He nodded, swallowing hard. "My grandpa passed away last week." It felt like all the sound in the garage collapsed at once. Samantha gripped the edge of her workbench. I'm so sorry. He told me about you. Jordan said, about what you did for the Mustang, and for him. He left something for you." He reached into the back seat and pulled out a small wooden box. Polished, smooth, edges worn by time. On top, in neat cursive, the initials W.J.G., Garrett's son, the one who never made it home. Jordan placed it in her hands like it weighed more than it looked. He said you'd know what to do with it. Samantha sat down on the steps outside the garage. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened the lid. Inside was a faded envelope, yellowed and sealed. She turned it over. The handwriting was different, younger. It wasn't Garrett's. It was addressed to Dad. Jordan stepped back, giving her space. Samantha broke the seal gently and unfolded the letter. As her eyes scanned the words, her heart squeezed. "Dad, if you're reading this, I guess I didn't make it back. I hate that. I hate that I left you with that old car and no one to argue about baseball with. I hope you didn't lock it away forever. But if you're reading this, that means you found your way back to it. That means maybe, just maybe, you're ready to live again. So here's what I need you to do. Find someone who can bring it back to life. Someone who sees more than metal and bolts. Someone who understands what it meant to us. And when it runs again, really runs, you drive it. Take it somewhere with the windows down and music up. Let it remind you what it feels like to move forward. I love you. And I promise I'm not gone. Just shifted gears. Will." Samantha read the letter twice. Then a third time. Tears blurred the edges, but it wasn't just sadness. It was awe. This wasn't just a car. It was a bridge between father and son, between the past and the present, between grief and healing. Jordan sat beside her on the step. "I never knew my dad," he said quietly. "But Grandpa told me. This car kept him close." Samantha handed him the letter. "Your dad wrote this for him. And somehow, he knew you'd need it too." That night, after the garage closed, Samantha didn't go home. She stayed with the Mustang, polished the hood, cleaned the windows. She even played one of Garrett's old records, crackling blues drifting into the desert air. She thought about the 3 men that Carr had touched. A son who never came back. A father who lost everything but found a reason to open his heart again. And a grandson who showed up, carrying the story forward. And suddenly she knew. This wasn't the end of the Mustang's story. It was the beginning of something much bigger. For weeks after Garrett's passing, the letter from Will stayed pinned on the garage wall right next to the photo of Garrett and his son beside the Mustang, now laminated to protect it from dust and grease. People noticed. Some stopped to read it. Others just stood quietly for a moment, hands in pockets, like they understood that this space was more than just a garage now. It was a memorial, a sanctuary, a breathing archive of stories built with metal, oil, and memories. But for Samantha, it became a purpose. She started offering legacy builds not officially, not with price tags, just If someone came in with a car that clearly meant more than it looked, she listened. An elderly woman brought in her late husband's Studebaker, said it hadn't moved since he passed 5 years ago. Samantha worked on it every evening for 2 weeks, sometimes well after dark. When she returned the keys, the woman cried in her arms. Another time, a teenage girl with shaky hands and too many burdens came by with her father's rusted pickup. He always said we'd finish it together, she whispered. But I lost him before we could. Samantha didn't charge her a dime. Word spread, not about the repairs, but about the kindness. And then something unexpected happened. A week before Thanksgiving, a local news crew showed up outside Blake's garage. Samantha had grease on her cheek and didn't even realize they were filming at first. Turns out, a customer had anonymously nominated her for a segment called Hearts of the Town. When the reporter asked her why she did it, why she poured hours into restoring cars for people who couldn't always pay, Samantha didn't give a rehearsed answer. She just smiled and said, "Because sometimes what's broken isn't just the machine. And if I can help someone drive forward again even a little, I figure that's worth my time." The clip went viral. Not millions of views viral, but just enough. Enough that 2 weeks later, a package arrived from a nonprofit in Austin. Inside a letter, a plaque, and a $10,000 grant for community restoration projects, led by women in trades. Samantha blinked at the number. She hadn't asked for recognition. She hadn't asked for anything. But kindness has a way of coming back around. And then came the moment that truly unraveled her. Jordan returned this time in his own car, a beat-up Corolla barely holding together. He sat in the waiting room quietly while she worked on a brake job. When she came out, he handed her a single manila envelope. "I've been talking to my mom," he said. "We want you to have this." Samantha opened it slowly. It was the deed to the garage. Blake's garage had been under city lease for years, grandfathered into a family land deal that Samantha had never been able to fully buy. She paid rent, did repairs herself, always worried one day the town would decide to reclaim the property. But here it was, signed, stamped, transferred. "Paid in full." She stared at him. Why would you do this?" Jordan gave the same soft smile his grandfather once had. "Because Grandpa told me some people fix more than cars. You helped him heal. You helped me understand him. That place was meant to be yours." That night, for the first time in years, Samantha stood alone in the center of the shop floor, no cars running, no tools clanking, and just breathed. She looked at the walls, now filled with photos, notes, newspaper clippings, and names of people who had walked in broken and left a little more whole. And she knew, without question, she wasn't just fixing engines. She was keeping legacies alive. And now, thanks to the kindness she gave without asking for anything in return, she had been given something greater than money or tools or recognition. She had been given the chance to keep going, not just as a mechanic, but as a bridge, a listener, a storyteller. The first time Samantha turned the lights on in Blake's garage as its official owner, something in her chest felt different. It wasn't about the deed, or the title, or even the grant money sitting in her business account. It was about what the place meant now. Every wrench, every scratch on the lift, every drop of oil on the floor, they were part of something much bigger than repairs. They were part of a living map of grief, memory, connection, and renewal. And she knew she couldn't keep that to herself. In January, she launched a new project, Rebuild and Remember, a monthly community program where people could nominate a car not for how rare or valuable it was, but for what it represented. A mother's road trip car, a grandfather's fishing truck, a young man's first cruiser never finished before deployment. Each story was reviewed by a group of volunteers, mechanics, teachers, veterans. Even Jordan helped when he could. And each month, one vehicle would be brought back not for profit, but for honor. The stories that poured in were staggering. Some barely legible through tear-stained handwriting, others typed neatly, attached with old Polaroids or folded letters from decades ago. And every time Samantha read one, she felt her chest ache, not in pain, but in reverence. Word spread. By spring, a documentary crew reached out not for a show, not for ratings, just a short piece about the garage that healed people through engines and empathy. They interviewed everyone. The elderly woman whose husband's Studebaker roared again. The teen girl who drove her dad's pickup down Main Street, crying behind the wheel. Even Jordan, who spoke softly into the mic. My grandfather left me a legacy. But Samantha, she gave it a heartbeat again. But it wasn't just the community that was changing. Samantha was, too. Where once she worked in silence, she now hosted Open Hood Saturdays, where kids could come learn how to change oil, rotate tires, or just sit in the front seat of a classic and dream. Where once she hid behind bolts and belts, she now shared stories of Garrett, of Will, of the moment she found the letter that changed everything. One afternoon, as she stood beside a rebuilt '72 Camaro, a boy asked her, "Do you think cars remember things?" She smiled. "I don't know if they do, but we remember them through cars. That's what makes it worth saving." Then, one dusty morning, an envelope arrived. No return address. Inside was a note in simple handwriting. "You're doing what my dad never got the chance to finish. You've made his story matter again. Thank you for carrying him forward. Lena Garrett." Garrett's daughter, Will's sister, Jordan's aunt. Samantha pressed the letter to her chest and closed her eyes. The Mustang had started it all, a broken relic from another life, and yet, somehow, it had found its way home. Piece by piece, story by story. That's what restoration was, really. Not perfection, but recognition. Not returning things to how they were, but honoring why they mattered. That night, with the bay doors open to the stars, Samantha stood in the quiet hum of the garage and thought about every hand that had touched this place, every engine whispering a memory, every person who left a little lighter than they arrived. And she knew this wasn't just Blake's garage anymore. It belonged to the past, to the people who hurt, to the people who healed, to the ones still searching. And she would be here, wrench in hand, heart wide open, engine humming, waiting to restore the next story that rolled in from the dust. Not every legacy is passed down in words. Some come wrapped in steel, sealed in silence, and restored by the hands of someone who dares to care. As the sun dipped behind the mountains of Blake's garage, Samantha Blake wiped the last bit of grease from her hands, not to close the shop, but to begin drafting a mentorship program for young women in trades. Girls like she once was underestimated, overlooked, but full of potential. Because now she knew that Mustang wasn't just a car. It was a bridge, a memory, a beginning. The girl who once fixed engines to escape the noise had become the woman restoring legacies that no one else could see. And for every lost story, every broken thing left behind, Samantha would be waiting wrench in hand, heart wide open. Because for her and for those she lifts up the road doesn't end here. It's only just begun. The end. Up next, 2 more stories that prove kindness still drives the world forward. Click to keep riding with us, and don't forget to hit subscribe if you believe that what's broken can always be rebuilt.